Okay, here we are. I am so excited to spend time with Jennifer Arnold. And you guys are going to be delighted to get to know her and, more importantly, get to know and understand her mission and big vision for the future, and a game changer as it relates to the service dog industry and helping people who are in need of guidance and support with our lovely canine, amazing animals that we have. So I'm very excited to get started. For those of you who are tuning in and may not know me, my name is Gila Kurtz. I am one of the co-founders of Dog is Good. And my guest today is Jennifer Arnold. She is the executive director and founder of Canine Assistance. And I just want to mention before we get started, I want to encourage you to watch the entire interview and also to share it with the people that you know. And I want you to consider different ways that you might want to step up to lend a helping hand, because they are doing some amazing work. And this kind of work just can't be done alone. So it takes a village. We know this. It takes an army, if you will. But you're going to have that opportunity to learn more on how you can get involved and engage with it. I also just want to take a second to thank everybody. I love watching the engagement in our group. I love seeing the posts. And more importantly, I love that you all are connecting as people, as dog lovers through this love and passion that we all have for our dogs. One of the things that has excited me is the way that Jennifer and I got connected. It's never a mistake when people connect, and particularly around a common belief. And I think both Jennifer and I hold this to be very true to our hearts. And that is the fact that a dog can change the way you see the world. And more importantly, they can change how you live in this world. And with the work that she does, she makes that possible for people to change the way they live, for them to experience life beyond what they thought might be possible. And again, we have our canine comrades to thank for that. But without further ado, let me introduce to you Jennifer, and welcome. Thank you for taking time to connect with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I have to tell you that I have a cat who is a dog-like cat who actually helps raise the puppies here at Canine Assistance.
Oh
and
my
he
gosh.
keeps wandering around, and so he may be coming back. It's Tamale. He's hot stuff. So he may be wandering back through. Sorry.
Well, that is okay. We absolutely love cats as well. So we welcome.
I figured that it would be a very benevolent group when it comes to animals. So
absolutely. And I would love to see, I would love if you have any video of Tamale taking care of the cat.
Well, he takes care of them in a very forward way. So
I can imagine
it because it's a little bit.
I'll say this before we actually jump in. One of my heart dogs is Sasha. And those of you who have known me for a while know my sweet girl, Sasha. She's such an angel. But anyway, when I was volunteering for an animal shelter in Florida, I took in 14, 15, 20 kittens. And we were doing a big feature on the local news to let people know it was cat season and there's kittens. Anyway, she was beside herself trying to corral them and take care of them. And it was the cutest thing. But I love how animals.
Tamale is really responsible for teaching puppies not to chase cats.
That is brilliant.
He sort of has to put on his bad cop hat when the puppies come out and are very forward. He has to tell them that, that's not the way you act around cats. And he's good at that.
Oh, well, that's great. But I mean, they have to learn. So
they do have to learn. Yeah.
Especially in the work that they're going to do. So anyway, let's dive in. I want to start with this because you are an incredibly passionate, mission-driven.
I am definitely passionate about what I do.
Absolutely. And I know that this organization truly was birthed out of your own personal experience, but that it took quite some time, almost 10 years to actually see it.
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years. Okay. To come to fruition. And that really does speak volumes to who you are, because I'm going to ask the audience watching, how many times have you had an idea or wanted to engage in something that you felt strongly about and you just didn't make it happen? And so Jennifer actually did make it happen. And so tell us a little bit about that background that led to the idea, and then what the organization actually does. And finally, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Well, when I was 16 years old, I got up one morning to go to the bathroom and I fell on the floor. I couldn't stand. And I was hospitalized, obviously, and was diagnosed then with multiple sclerosis. It's a diagnosis that's since been changed to something called relapsing polychondritis. It's a cousin of MS. It affects cartilaginous tissue instead of the covering of the nerves, but an autoimmune disease as well. And I was really sick when I was in the hospital. And, you know, at 16, you fall apart easily, I think, or I did. And my father, I was the fourth child, and I think I might have been a little bit of a surprise. But when I came along, my dad, who was an eye surgeon in Atlanta, his practice was well established, and we got to spend a lot of time together, and we were best friends. So my dad was really worried about me because when I got out of the hospital, I couldn't walk at all. And they thought I would never walk again at that point, and made that very clear to me. But I just kind of got in my bed and wouldn't get out. And Daddy had just read an article about a woman in California, whose name is Bonnie Bergen, who was starting to teach dogs to help people who use wheelchairs. And he reached out to her, and unbeknownst to me, and she remembers talking to him, which is very tender to me, but you know, she had several dogs in her home. I mean, there was no way she could send a dog across the country to Georgia. I mean, this was, you know, 1981, 80. And so it wasn't going to happen. But my dad had this great idea, and that was that, you know, if I needed a dog in our area, other people would too. So he came one night and he sat on the edge of my bed, and he said, I've got this idea, and I think it could work. And he said, I don't want you to think I'm telling you this is why you got sick, because I don't believe that. But I do believe that this might be something that you can do with your life because you got sick. And he explained the whole thing. We'd always been huge animal lovers, especially my mom and I, but really the whole family. I was beyond excited. I'm sorry, I'm going to cry through this part. I always do. It doesn't matter how many years it's been. So with my blessing, he met with a CPA the Friday after Thanksgiving in 1980, and they named it Canine Assistance. And 2 weeks later, he was walking home from my grandmother's house. She lived a block away. And he was on the sidewalk. There's a big park in Atlanta called Chastain Park. And it is a golf course that has this huge sidewalk that goes around it. And he was walking on the sidewalk, and a drunk driver on a motorcycle jumped up on the sidewalk and hit him. And he died the next morning at the hospital where he worked for most of his career. And he only lived overnight because he was a really nice man, and his coworkers couldn't bear to let him go. But I stayed there overnight in my wheelchair in this little ICU waiting area. I think everybody in my family thought somebody else had gotten me. I was there by myself for most of the night. And they kept coming out to give me updates on Dad. And it was a very long night. But as the night went by and I realized there was no way based on the updates that he was going to survive, I got angry enough to say, life is really bad. That's not how I put it in my head, but I won't use that language. And there's no reason to live it unless you can do something to make it easier for other people. So the promise that I made myself was that I would never give up trying to make it easier for other people. Totally did this because it saved my own life. People say you've done a wonderful thing. I saved my own life doing this. I don't feel like it's been a gift to me, not to other people. But it took my mom and I a week We didn't have any money when Dad died. He was a wonderful physician and a terrible business person. So it took us a long time to stabilize and be able to, bring in enough money just for us to be okay. And then we both went to work to raise the money to start the program. And we did in 1991. We were incorporated December 31st, 1991. So we've been here for 30 years.
Wow.
And we work with people who have mobility difficulties.
Oh, hold on. Before you get into that, I have to stop for just a moment. I want to honor this moment. Incredibly profound. And I want to thank you for the vulnerability and for sharing that pain and being an example that from pain, from despair, comes purpose. Sometimes
can, and it can save your life. I mean,
yes,
because there are times that there is absolutely no other reason to fight on.
yes.
You just don't feel like you, but when you focus outside of yourself, it gets a whole lot easier.
100%. And I just feel very blessed to just be sitting here right now, listening to your story, and I just want to thank you for that, because I think that's
very sweet.
Yeah, no,
thank you.
So I wanted to honor that before we moved on to what Canine Assistance actually does. And, I'm getting a feel for why you do what you do, but I think as an organization, it's grown beyond that too. So
it has. We started working with people who like me were having difficulty with mobility, I used to chair for a little over 2.5 years total before I got better. Lots of steroids, and that's what keeps me going still. I mean, I need the medication to help me, but so we focused on people who use wheelchairs, who need help with balance, etc. And as time went along, and I mean, we were immediately overwhelmed by the need. We had printers at this local print shop. They were donating these little brochures that we were having printed when we first started. And it took them about 10 days. And by the time I went to pick up these brochures, we had 19 applications already.
wow.
I had no idea how people even heard about us that fast. The need is massive. And so as time went along, we're really good at certain things, and we're good with mobility dogs. That's always been kind of our bread and butter, but where I think we really shine is with scent detection dogs and epilepsy and type 1 diabetes. And I didn't mean to get into working with dogs who are seizure alert or seizure response dogs, but I had a young man come in my office one day and say, basically, I don't want to live anymore. He had been gotten an appointment to West Point from the military. And I understand that that's extraordinarily hard to do. It was this tremendous honor, and it was his dream. And 2 weeks after he got there, he had his first seizure. And you can't stay in the military. He had to leave, and it devastated him. And he really was struggling to want to be here. And I think because that, I could identify with that kind of pain. I couldn't turn him away. And I said, I have no idea how to do that. I mean, at that point, I think I had heard of a women's prison in West Virginia who was, I had no idea how to do it. But we figured it out. And again, I saw this massive need, and need to have dogs. It's not just that there's so many people who have epilepsy that's out of control, or people who need an advance alert. It's that they need, I don't know, they need companionship, and the number of seizures that people have drops after they get a dog. And, it's big picture. If they get early warning, they can go where they're not embarrassed. And so this became a real labor of love for us. And sort of we're very science-based in the way we approach things. And so we immediately began to study what it was that dogs were responding to, when they could reliably, predict the onset of seizures. I wanted to know how. And for a long time, there was an argument about whether or not it was behavioral or electrical. Well, it's odor-based, period. And as is their ability to tell, when blood sugar is out of range, something they're very good at. There are other things that dogs can do with their noses that are life-saving as well for people. Cystic fibrosis, they can tell when bacteria, which, by the way, a layperson cannot order bacteria over the internet without being put on a watch list. I ordered all these.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh boy. Jennifer got flagged. Yeah.
But they can tell, and that's life-saving for folks.
It is so fascinating, the capabilities, and it is amazing and so powerful that we're able to utilize those strengths in a way.
Well, the fact that they're kind enough to tell us. I mean, I understand that their noses are so astonishing that that's beyond anything that will ever truly be comprehensible to me. I mean, they're so much more powerful than ours, that it's hard for me to even imagine what that's like for them. But the fact that, so I understand that they can smell it. It's the fact that they're nice enough to worry about it when they do.
Exactly. Now you have
incredible
particular philosophy, the bond approach to living. Can you expand on that?
Sure. So when we first started, we were kind of old-fashioned obedience, because I didn't know how you did this. And we had a woman who volunteered, a dog trainer who came in and helped us. And she was old school. I mean, 30 years ago, it was pretty common. And my mom and I used to hide because, the dogs would yipe when she'd leash correct them. And we were horrified. And very quickly I had a little group of like special ed dogs that couldn't tolerate that. And then I got brave enough to say, I appreciate what you've done for us, but I think we need to do this a different way. And we went positive reinforcement, and we ultimately ended up doing a lot of clicker work, which I was really excited about. So was everybody here, the people, because I was proud of us. We were the white hat guys then, and we were doing what was right for the dogs. And except the dogs kept getting more and more anxious. And I couldn't understand why. They were more anxious. By the time we got to clicker training, they were about to jump out of their skin with anxiety. We had to put our dogs on Imodium before camps, when people would come in for 2 weeks to meet and get matched with their dogs, because they would have diarrhea, period. And I wrote it off initially as coming from the fact that we used more treats then, and, sort of the chaos of camp. But that wasn't it. I mean, that was a very small part of it, if any at all. So my husband and I, and the dogs would climb all over the table, and people had to use commands to control the behavior of the dogs. Does that make sense? Like, sit down, stay, leave it, off. So I would walk in the classroom, and all I would hear is, off, leave it, off. And I didn't love that. And I didn't think that was the right thing. I thought, we haven't cracked the code yet. So we did, my husband is our staff veterinarian here, and he and I spent 3 years really researching the partnerships that we had out working, who were extraordinary and what made them extraordinary, the history of dog training, and indeed animal training overall, why we do it, why people do it the way they do it. And, was there an alternative? And honestly, there really wasn't an alternative to training. So we created one. And the bond-based approach is not about training. We don't train, we teach. And the difference is that with training, the focus tends to be on controlling the dog's actions. The way we teach with bond-based is through a secure attachment to a human being. That's first. It's kind of roots and wings.
Mm-hmm.
The roots is that secure attachment they have to a person or people ultimately. And then the wings is their confidence in themselves. But we don't do sit down, stay. We do we ask them binary questions, yes, no, either or. We work on their reasoning by exclusion. When we need something from them, we ask, we never tell. It's very different. We don't want to control their bodies. We want to let them do that.
You'd like to have excuse me for interrupting, the dog be an active participant and partner in the learning process.
Yeah, absolutely. And make choices and make good choices. And the reason they make good choices is because they're so attached to us that they mimic and mirror and imitate and synchronize with us. Mm-hmm. So when we sit down, like when I get on an airplane now with a dog and they fly in the cabin, service dogs fly in the cabin. So if I'm taking a dog to someone and the dog's in the cabin with me, I sit down, I look at the dog, I sort of lean back and we're going to be here for a while. And the dog just flops down. I mean, that means, okay, nothing's going on. Nothing's going to go on. I don't tell them to down and stay. I let them make that call.
You know what I'm noticing, Jennifer, actually, if I may, is based on the bonding component, it is making it possible for you as the educator,
right,
or the other people working with the dog, to remove a little bit of a stress per performance kind of thing. So you yourself end up being more relaxed, more matter of fact, more conversational, and the dog is adapting to that way of being, and in return also feeling less stressed and like,
well, and they don't worry that, one thing about using treats as using food rewards or even affection as a reward or toys. When you use rewards, the flip side of reward is punishment. It can't exist. A reward cannot exist without punishment. And when I realized that was the day that everything changed for me, because the absence of reward is in itself somewhat punishing.
Gotcha.
And education shouldn't be about punishment.
Right. I love that. I love that your organization is so focused on educating versus training. And I love this approach. Now, I am curious to know, I know you offer a lot of different services, and I know based on what you shared at the beginning, but also just in general, that there are many, many, many people who need these dogs. What is the biggest challenge that you face as an organization in getting the dogs to the people?
It's just the need. I mean, money is obviously always our biggest challenge, but
sure,
beyond that, it's just we average 6 applications a day.
Right.
We have 100 dogs here, and that's a lot for us. So we're going to graduate, 80. But there's no way. I mean, and we want to be able to help. Most of these people are appropriate for dogs. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's no way we're ever going to be able to meet that need. And it makes me crazy. And I don't think, this is another thing that we looked at. And we realized, my husband and I, that the system is not scalable. This idea of individual service dog schools. Mm-hmm. even if we wanted to franchise and open a bunch of canine assistances across the country, I still don't think that's going to get it. I don't, we learn every day more that dogs can do to help people, and the need is just going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So there needs to be we need to think about this in an entirely different way. So
that's one of the things that I love, and we're going to get into that in just a moment here. But this is where you're taking the passion and the mission, and you're saying, okay, this is what needs to be fulfilled. And then you're stepping aside, you're getting out of the jar for just a moment.
Right.
To look at what are the elements that may prevent us from getting to where we want to go, the long-term vision of providing this for everyone who needs it. And the realization that you're right. And I love that you just said that it is a huge, huge gap between where you and any other service dog organization is, and the scalability component. And so I love that you are innovative and that you're coming up with ideas and different strategies that will help to close that gap. And so I want to give you some time now just to share what you guys are putting together and your thought around how to best close that gap and really make it more dogs available.
So our idea is that the only model that will ever be scalable to such an extent that it will make a real difference is to find a way to help people work with their own dogs, with dogs that they acquire, although, we can provide support on that. But there's just, we got to get the school part out of it. We will continue always to have dogs here because that's how we learn to help people. But we have this pretty well figured out. And our idea is to have coaches in communities across the country who help families. And we'll be available to the coaches, 24/7 to answer questions, to help with problems. We will educate them prior to their working with families. We'll give them everything we know, and help them, source the dogs. This is really not rocket science. I mean, it takes some commitment, and it takes a bit of a village. So this is you need the coach component because that's going to be really important. But there are a lot of nice people in the world who I think will help.
I completely agree, and giving them the opportunity to see this. So for those of you who are watching, you may be thinking yourself like, oh my gosh, how could I be a coach? How could I be assisting a family in identifying a rescue or some other dog and then helping them teach it to provide the service that the person really does need, the medical service that they need.
We will hold your hand every step of the way.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Well, and I also want to say, and maybe you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm the perfect person. So I want you to share this out with them so that they can get in touch with Jennifer and the team at Canine Assistance. What would it entail? If you could just give just like the 30,000 foot view synopsis of what the coach.
Well, being a coach is going to look a little different, depending on the coach's ability to take dogs into their home, et cetera. I mean, there will be undoubtedly many wonderful coaches who can't bring dogs home. Optimally, a coach would be able to provide some respite care, especially if the family is going to start with a young dog. Because, when your life is already pretty hard and chaotic because of this illness or injury, then, you add a puppy or a young adult dog and the chaos. And so you can need some nights off. So optimally, the coach would be able to take the dog home for, some nights to help. But if that's not possible, that's okay. It's workable beyond that. But what they would do is, provide educational support all the way through. So we would teach them, they would teach the family.
Got it. And would there be community for them so that they could be collaborating and talking? Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's going to be a huge part of it is the coaches are going to get, I see the coaches as needing a tremendous amount of support. And that's why I think that beyond our being available to them 24/7, and we will designate a staff member once we rob a local bank to, no, I didn't mean that. But we will have a staff member who is there just for the coaches, because that's going to be important. But then we will create, an online community for the coaches so that they can help each other. And
Yes.
in the questions they're going to get asked and the problems they're going to run into and the difficulties they're going to have with the dogs are going to be things that we've seen before many times. And that soon it will be that other coaches will have seen it many times, and their need to lean on us will lessen over time.
Well, and so I'm also going to say this to the community watching, that in addition to considering, hey, maybe I could be a coach, or, oh my gosh, I know the perfect person that I want to share this with. You may also know companies that want to provide support to organizations who are doing this kind of work, because it obviously can't be done without the support of.
And I don't want it to be about money. I really don't. That's something that Mom and I, we made that deal when we finally started Canine Assistance. And it makes me very sad, because when people apply to us and they in other organizations and they find out that the waiting list is so long, they sort of have two options. And one is that they go buy a dog. And I know there are people who sell dogs who are reputable. I'm sure there are. I've run into more the people who aren't very fair, and I don't want to see that happen to people. Plus, I think it's humiliating to have to. I mean, very few people in this situation have $25,000 that they can pay to, or 50 or whatever people charge. And then the other alternative is that they just go get a dog and do the best they can. And it is possible to raise your own dog, but not without support. I mean, that's hard.
You're right. It is. Well, so there are many ways that people can get involved. There is this new coach/educator component that's available, with training, with support, with constant guidance, where you guys are locking arms with them and walking the journey in supporting them as they support a family or an individual.
This is going to have to be a massive effort, though. So it's going to take lots and lots of people. And yes, we'll certainly need funding as time goes along. So anything anybody can come up with.
Absolutely.
Send lawyers, guns, and money.
Yes. And there's other things that people can do to get involved too. And I want to encourage all of you just to go to canineassistance.org. You can see the different ways that you can get involved. You can
be bond-based with your own dog if you can. It makes such a big difference.
Absolutely.
Such a big difference.
It absolutely does. Well, Jennifer, I want to thank you so much for taking time.
Oh, thank you for caring. Are you?
Oh my gosh.
I love the Dog is Good community has been incredible. And I think that, sorry, that makes me a little weepy too. You are extraordinary people, and we are very fortunate to have found you, and we're grateful.
Well, I will take that, and I am blessed. And we do have a great community and a great team. And I love that everyone that we get to connect with is so mission driven. There is power in purpose. And without doubt, yours is so crystal clear. And without you, I can only imagine the countless lives that you have touched, not just the people who've received dogs who have changed their lives, but for the people who to connect with you on a daily basis, who are inspired by you and your fortitude and your commitment and your vision and your innovation as well. It's going to change the world based on this new approach. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please, again, share this out. Please go to canineassistance.org to learn more about them. Please consider how you might get involved as a possible coach and educator, or if you know someone to share that and certainly for anyone who wants to contribute in any way to the cause, or know companies who would be open to a conversation on how to best sponsor and make a difference. You can reach out to Jennifer, her team, Kizzy, direct
info@canineassistance.org will get you everybody you need.
Okay, perfect. All right, Jennifer, thank you again. Stay with me here for just a moment and stop the recording. And thank you, everybody, for taking time to learn about the organization.